Consultant Director of Nexus, Charlotta Öhlén.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Magnus. So, before I dig into identities, I have a bit of a personal questions for you. One personal question. And don't be embarrassed. You don't need to answer it if you don't want to. But has anyone in here had an identity crisis? It's a bit light. I can't see so much. Anyone? Oh, there's a few. That's good. Or maybe it wasn't good, but thanks for sharing. It's good to see that there's still some energy left in here. I'm going to start off telling you a story about my pre-teenage identity crisis. The year was 1984, and it was my first day in the 4th grade in elementary school. My surname, as you see, starts with the last letter in the Swedish alphabet. So I had to wait until all my new classmates had their names announced. Finally, it was my turn. Anna Kristina, my new teacher, called that. Those were my given names, but I was not used to be called Anna Kristina. I was called Lotta by family and friends. It turned out that my new teacher was very talented, but also she was a bit of an old-fashioned lady, and she refused to call me anything but what it said in the school registry. So around the time when I was trying to figure out who I was, I decided to change my name to Charlotta. And eventually, at that time, this change would populate from the National Population Registry to the school registry. And my new teacher would finally start calling me what I wanted. Little did I realize at the time that there is no such thing as one identity. And different combinations of Charlotta would follow me for probably the rest of my life. And they don't work anymore, they're history, these ones. So here I am, Charlotta Öhlén. I'm Consulting Director at Nexus. Since 2012, I've been responsible for all our deliveries, including software and consulting services in the Nordic region. I have worked as an IT security consultant since the beginning of this century. And it's so nice to see so many familiar faces in here today. I have had so much fun working in different projects, in different roles, with colleagues, partners, customers across most industries. The world has changed since 1984. Today, we work online, we pay our bills online, and we text and Facebook our friends. Our cars are connected, and so are many other things that we interact with on a daily basis. There's a new level of communication between people and people and things, having a huge impact on our business processes and our daily lives. We talked about the cloud today, and huge amounts of data is being generated and put to the cloud. So managing identities, credentials, entitlements, as well as managing data, is key when adopting to this new world. So 2015, we don't regard IT security as a technology concern anymore, but rather as a challenge and an opportunity to our society as a whole. So some of the general trends that we see, I think we touched upon a few of these throughout the day. So more systems, information, and services become more and more available. More systems traditionally means more usernames and passwords. But there are other solutions, such as single sign-on, federation, even bring your own identity for low-risk use cases. Systems are getting more and more integrated, and personal data is getting more and more spread out. I think Jan really introduced us to this complex area. When systems are getting more integrated, the dependencies become much more harder to grasp. And also questions like who owns the data become more hard to address. And also risk assessment and risk management become more complex. Traditional crimes are moving to the digital arena, such as identity theft, blackmailing. According to the NSA, Bruce is gone now, but I read something like identity theft cost Americans $10 billion more than traditional crimes, such as household burglary and car theft. But then again, identity theft can happen in the physical world as well as in the digital world and in the combined world. We see increased harmonization within the European Union in many different areas, such as e-identification, but in particular in terms of data protection rules. I think Marcus even touched on this very early this morning. We had an interesting discussion on that. I will come back to that. So historically, back in the 80s or so, identities were isolated in specific domains. There was no big need to interact and change identities between the different domains or information about identities. However, when systems became more available, then also administration costs increased and users were getting more frustrated. Today, we see that you can use the same identity in different domains, and identities are federated across organizational boundaries. And that's one of the big challenges in terms of identity challenge. The interoperability is really complex. So in the future, and this has in fact already started to happen, there's a trend towards that the identity becomes more central. We see that the domains are connected to the identities instead. So users and things and even software will be provided with dynamic identities. So we see that different attributes shape the identity, such as personal attributes, like I'm a female, I'm over 18. Social attributes, like I'm a member of this Facebook club, like a bicycle club. And legal attributes that can be useful in some contexts, like I'm married or I'm the mother of 2 children and so on. So in this table, we see a lot of formats, standards, and protocols. I will not go through them in detail, but this is just a selection. There are so many different standards that needs to be managed and used to create this interoperability. It's a really complex world. But to show a little bit of a more sort of optimistic approach, we can compare it with the internet and email. Most people, well, Johanna does, and probably many of you, but most people in general don't know exactly what those underlying standards do. We just know that it works. So the end user experience is really important. So when standards become universal, system integration becomes so much easier, and identities become more portable. Now, I'm going to show 3 case studies from real-life customer cases where trusted identities are provided. We talked a lot about trust today. Are they trusty? Are they trustworthy? So in this context, these customers decide to trust in these identities. we'll see that the solutions are different in the different cases, but the key needs are resolved with one dynamic identity platform. So the first case shows a bit of a traditional solution, providing users with smart cards. The concept is quite similar to the SITS, the Swedish SITS concept, for those of you who are familiar with that. I have the opportunity to manage this delivery from Nexus perspective, and the solution is delivered by three security companies, including Obertur and Confidus as well. The end customer is HSØ, which is a health organization within southeast of Norway. So today, they have no electronic identification. They have no common way of accessing their physical buildings. And a lot of the things that they do with paperwork, they write the prescriptions by hand and so on. So what they want to achieve is to supply smart cards for all doctors within this healthcare organization. And that's to start with about 8,000 doctors, and eventually provide all personnel within the region, about 70,000 people with smart cards. And so what will these smart cards do for them? It will provide a physical identification and also electronic identification. So with one single card, they will be able to actually show their identities, meeting with the patients on a daily basis, as well as logging into the different domains, applying functions like single sign-on, and also added encryption of patient data, and digital signing important decisions. And there the e-prescription is an easy one, the first one out. So the key benefit with this solution for this user group is to have an identity that they decide to trust in their work environment. And we provide this with this card management system with different integration points. So to verify that the user is actually who she or he claims to be, there are different control points, such as looking at the user in the National Population Registry, in the Health Care Registry, as well as pushing data back and forth with their identity management system. So by doing this, hopefully in the end, there will be more time for the doctors to actually focus on their jobs as doctors and not as administrators. The next case is a global IoT company, GreenWave. I think that was one of the things that we saw in the beginning of this day on the survey, something that we think is a huge threat, identity of things. Imagine having your business based on, not on IT, but on IoT. I think this is really cool. So, and also it's cool, but it's also very important to add relevant security functions when it comes to all these connected things. And there's been a lot of discussions in the media lately regarding how easy it is and how these flaws can be used in a not wanted way. I think the car industry has been really exposed to potential threats when hackers can potentially cut off the brakes, turn off the engine, or even drive off the road. Imagine in this case if you were connected to all your devices in your home, and this is the concept that GreenWave provides their customers to really interact with their devices in the terms of in the smart home. Imagine if someone would actually interfere with that communication and start controlling the devices, turning the gas on, and increasing the temperature, even setting the house on fire, causing an explosion. Not so nice. So what we provide in this case is the security level between the gateway controlling the home devices, and the green wave cloud, where all these devices are connected from. So functions like mutual authentication can be added, data can be encrypted, and you would know exactly which devices you talk to. What makes this case very interesting from a delivery perspective is that we deliver this solution as a managed service to our customer, and Greenway delivers their solution to their customers as managed services. So this really put pressure on service providers to challenge their business models to actually fit with the customer's business models. Like you can't have a $1 thing that has a security layer costing $10. The third and last case for today takes us back to the healthcare industry, where quality and patient data are key things. So it could have been any other critical business. So Elekta is a human care company with business all over the world, providing clinical solutions for medical treatment. High availability and also compliance with the sector requirements, such as Medical Device Directive, are key drivers. And all these devices are obviously connected, and also they're connected to the back-end systems, and so that they need to communicate in a secure way. So it's important to apply a proactive security solution to address the threat of viruses and malware. And this method is known as whitelisting, basically based on the creation of a unique identity for each and every software. So the solution is really verification before execution. The system may never run anything but approved software. So unknown and unwanted software will be treated as malware. So the whitelist is simply a list with applications that are granted to execute. And if they're not on the list in this isolated environment, then they're not allowed to execute. And if they are on the list, then they are allowed to run. So this concept ultimately aims to give the personnel more trust to do their jobs as doctors and surgeries and so on, instead of worrying if their devices can be trusted or fit for purpose. So these three cases are really focused on trusted identities provided to and also smooth lifecycle management. I didn't focus so much on that. Basically, the lifecycle management to provide the users, the units, and also the software with unique trusted identities, and also the full cycle of revocation and so on. So we talked a lot about trust today, and you decide what you trust. I think in these cases, it's a bit easier when there's a sort of strong incitement to sort of do your thing, do your job, then identification is much easier. So yeah, we have the doctors, they need the cards, they need to identify themselves, they need to basically access the functions to do that job. And the things you interact with, you want your things to be identified. And if you're a piece of software, you want to execute. Okay, so far I've focused a lot of identities and standards and challenges around that. Now I'm going to focus on the user. So there's a trend towards a user-centric approach. We see that in a lot of areas, also when it comes to protocols. And we mentioned the data protection rule and the harmonization going on within the European Union. So the idea behind this is the right to protection of personal data. That's the key, to give the user more control. And there is a law, I mean, an existing law that we are using on a daily basis within the European Union. But this new approach put even more emphasis on privacy than before. There's a suggestion that would make it possible to be forgotten, and that would give the user more power to delete personal data. And finally, a very important objective is to make it easier for companies to comply with these new rules. And if they don't, the plan is, of course, to punish them with large fines. There's always a risk that harmonization is not easy due to several factors, such as different maturity levels in the different countries. I read this Eurobarometer, I think it was a couple of years ago, where it said that 90% of Europeans has a positive attitude to these new initiatives. So I'm very optimistic and very curious to see what will happen, and the plan is that these rules will be decided in the end of this year, and that implementation will start shortly after. Okay, this session is coming to an end, but to wrap up, I'd just like to summarize my key points. Everything and everyone will need a dynamic identity to reach new levels of communication. There are flexible, dynamic solutions to achieve this. But we need to respect the user's privacy and the right to control personal data. And we must find solutions to protect personal data. This is really our responsibility. And the future is now. We've seen that today. I mean, the future is now, and we know for sure that it's continuously changing all the time. So we will try to and be agile. So just like any pre-teenage identity crisis, once we have identified the challenges, we also have great opportunities to resolve our time's identity crisis. Thank you.